Are the elite inferring that humans are to blame for the confluence of natural disasters, machine innovations since the first industrial revolution? We'll take a closer look coming right up. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Black Spring with Autumn, and hope you guys are doing well out there. And I just want to give a warm hello to the loyal patrons, the subscribers, as well as the followers on Periscope. Thank you guys so much for coming in, and I thank you as always for taking care with those pesky AI or channelitic reasons that we go through around here. So thank you so much for tuning in, and a warm hello to William Welch. Thank you so much for coming in. Okay, on today we'll have a bit of a focus, and I want to have a change of pace just a little bit on your Tuesday. And our focus will include just a brief on the mocktails, which is the term that we use for the vaccines, and that's on a global and a domestic outlook that we will take a look. And we'll also maybe just have a brief word on the targets of the US emergency authorization, the vaccine authorizations. We'll take a look at John Kerry and his resurfacing at last week's forum, and we'll take some smaller looks at the change in some of the Republican trajectory, a bit on the Rhino supporters, empathizers, even a bit from the Ingram angle. Hope you guys are doing well out there. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. And hello to Steve Willis. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. So, we'll get into a couple of hello, Angela Reed. We'll get into just a couple of things. We're going to go a little bit around the we're going to go around the spectrum a little bit. We'll do a little political, and then we'll go a little bit into we'll go, of course, to vaccines, or mocktails is the code word around here. And we'll have a little bit of imagery for you in between these. So I'm going to get you in and out on your holiday week. And thank you guys so much for coming in. So what we can start with is we can start with just a bit, and we'll have our first screen that will be before you will come from Forbes. We've had quite a few of the Republicans, if you will, that have, kind of offered their sentiments of, I don't know if you want to call it of uh, of congratulatory or an approval, but we'll start just briefly on that. So I noticed that we'll go ahead and go with the first liner on this one, just a brief on this because we have quite a bit to get into and we have to do it under 60. And yeah, so and I'm saying all this, I'm kind of prefacing this, and I don't mean to mock anyone, but I'm almost beginning to feel a little bit sorry for the Rhino supporters or the Rhino empathizers. Um, I mean, or should I? I mean, I'm not sure if I feel for them or if it's time to face the music in many ways. I think that's necessary. And hello to King Julian 40. Thank you so much for coming in. So let's just have a quick look over at this is going to come from Forbes, and what you see before you. We'll just have a couple of comments here. So I'm just going to start here in the center. This is not the center of the discourse right now. So this comes from Forbes, and the original liner is that top House Republican Trump allies break with President efforts to overturn election fail. So I'll just go ahead and preface it just for the background information here. According to this, is by Andrew Solander. He says more members of Congress and staunch Trump allies have shifted their positions on the election away from President Trump's hardline refusal to concede in recent days, as the president's legal team has continued to face failure in their uphill battle to overturn results in key states. All right, so we'll start here. Here's your key facts according to Forbes. On Saturday, Representative Liz Cheney, a Republican of Wyoming, daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, and the number 3 Republican in the House, called on Trump to, quote, fulfill his oath by respecting the sanctity of our electoral process, end quote, if he fails to prove his so far unproven fraud claims. Your next segment here is Representative Anthony Gonzalez, a Republican of Ohio, told The Hill that Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani's conspiracy-laden press conference on Thursday, which has already prompted several GOP defections, was, quote, embarrassing, end quote, and said, quote, he didn't see anything that was even close to proof of widespread fraud. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, a member of Trump's inner circle who assisted him with debate prep, called Trump's legal efforts a, quote, national embarrassment, end quote, and suggested, quote, the evidence of fraud doesn't exist, end quote, during an ABC appearance on Sunday. And after a conservative federal judge in Pennsylvania delivered a sharply worded dismissal to Trump lawsuit seeking to block certification of states' results on Saturday, Senator Pat Toomey, of a Republican of Pennsylvania, became the 5th GOP senator to congratulate Joe Biden on his win, calling him, quote, president-elect in a statement. And finally, here is Senator Kevin Cramer, Republican of North Dakota, who has been called Trump's, quote, Senate alter ego, and quote, said Trump should be allowed to pursue legal avenues in a Meet the Press appearance Sunday, but said, quote, there has to be an end, end quote, to them. So that's just a few. Actually, I'm hearing that there are actually more. I've heard of Lisa Murkowski, along with James Langford. So, I mean, but there again, is anyone actually surprised? I can't say that that I'm surprised, but you have to learn. At some point, you have to learn, and you have to face the music when it's available. And I just want to give a warm welcome to everybody in the stream, and thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment. So we'll go back in terms of propaganda and in terms of the tenor and the tone. You even had a little bit of devil's advocate or tough love that came out of last night's Laura Ingraham, as she delivered a hypothesis on reality, or I'm calling it tough love here on this channel. And of course, she's done what we've heard from many of the globalists and the elite, touting an opportunity. But her spin was that the opportunity exists amongst Republicans in thwarting some of the Biden administration's efforts to keep to maintain as much of the America First agenda, which we'll see what that looks like. But she mentions, of course, I'm paraphrasing here, that unless things change in an unlikely fashion, and the Supreme Court is not likely to deliver a victory. So pull yourself together, according to Laura Ingraham. Thank you guys so much for coming. William Welch. He says George W. lost most of the lower court cases until SCOTUS declared him president. Yeah, I don't know if it's a matter of a millennial. They just don't have the history to inform, or has America's memory become so fickle that they can't hold on to any memories of any past elections. I can't really speak to that, but I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, William Welch. I mean, we I think some of it is more common knowledge, but I think I think many people are just relying on their emotions to get them through everything, and it's the my guy show. It's turning into that. It's my guy show. So that's what they're rolling with, if you will. So I thank you guys so much for all that you do. Thanks so much for coming in. And so I'm going to, for a change of pace here, um, Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson, I'm thinking that, I mean, in some ways, I applaud Laura Ingraham for, she's saying that, oh, well, you know me, you're only going to get the truth from me. And who would I be to give you anything less than the truth? So I think that was pretty loaded with a little bit of virtue signaling there. But, that's her style right now. And she's trying to, I think she's just trying to she's trying to break it to you gently and trying to give you that, I guess, trying to give you that tough love that she says that she's been doing. She's trying to build on her credibility as Laura Ingraham and her Ingraham angle as she has done. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in and just a bit on the mocktails. And we have code words around here. Now, according to the Bloomberg News, the US FDA is to meet December 10th to discuss emergency authorization for the mocktails. And globally, AstraZeneca is actually seems to be the most economical option for the developing countries and a bit more durable in terms of storage. So I think AstraZeneca Oxford is going to be the choice of mocktail for those in the, I guess, the less developed or less economically developed nations. And according to the Bloomberg News, they're actually lagging behind. So it looks like Pfizer and BioNTech and some of the other makers are, I guess, the pricing point is not quite where it needs to be. So it looks like they are working on contracts in that regard as well. So I thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we're going to have just a bit of a word before we go on for our sponsors. I thank you guys so much for all that you do, and we'll be right back. If you're looking for great content creators on the subject of politics, news, culture, scripture, history, automobiles, culture, and much, much more, check out our sponsors: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Joseph Francis Burton, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. And now, back to the news. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Now, we can just make a quick note here that for months that we've heard from quite a few of the elites, whether they are global elites or domestic shareholders, East and West, as they discuss, the pandemic, economy, climate change, and prosperity, and even support for China coming from many of these elements, if you will. So with that said, we are going to take a quick look at a bit of the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. That's the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. I thank you guys so much for tuning in.
We would like to cooperate within the region.
If it's something specific that makes sense that people can see they benefit from, they will support globalization and cooperation. And if the specifics are things they find immensely threatening, they won't.
The power of China today is a fact, and it's a perfectly justifiable fact in the sense of it's a large population country, ancient civilization, huge economy. China is and should be one of the great powers of the world for the 21st century.
It's questionable whether enough preparation has been made. We're preparing very significantly here in Ireland, and we would be the first to admit that there will be challenges even in a normal Brexit.
We need to remain cautious, but there is very good reason for us to be very optimistic. And I truly believe that we will get through this much stronger and also in a much healthier manner.
One of the fundamental outcomes of these 11 months has been that each one of us has been challenged. We've been pushed. We have had to innovate and think through and push forward.
A good deal for us would be a deal where we could import cheaper goods from China, but export our services. And I thought TPP was something where...
All right, guys. And that was a bit of a clip from the Bloomberg New Economy Forum. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the globalist or the elite, or even if you want to go into the actual shareholders, what they're talking about at this time. And as I was saying earlier, we've talked about, of course, the GR, the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, or the morph. It's, to me, it seems to be it's something that the Great Reset has morphed from something else. It was preceded by something else. So we'll just go with that for now. But I will tell you just a little bit, just a brief synopsis, that the Bloomberg New Economy Forum basically kind of prefaced their discussions on the opportunity for cities and their growing diverse populations and what the effects of the CV has had from the last 8 to 9 months and what's to come. But even with all the propaganda out there, I'm not convinced that the world is still not awaiting the final outcome of the US 2020 election, no matter what. No matter how many offices of the president-elect signs that they get, the graphics committee to work on, or it's still there's still relevance there. So, but I think it's to, politically they're trying to maybe even thwart support or any of those people that are still hanging on to what the higher courts or the Supreme Court would bring in terms of investigations and reveal and examining all the evidence that has come out. And I mean, of course, by now you've heard even of the Sidney Powell kerfuffle. It's just like, my gosh, people, some people are actually independent. They are independent contractors. Everyone is not either an appointee, of course. I mean, it's the same thing, when you think of even Dr. Fauci. I mean, he wasn't appointed or elected by the people, but he has still served as an authority in the health and the management over the last several months. So everyone is actually not, you can be an independent contractor and still serve the nation. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people are just, absolutely, I don't know, they've taken leave of mind or something. I don't know what happens, but that's what's going on. Whether you support one way or another, you still have to use some level of discernment when it comes to what's coming out of the news and, the veracity. How much veracity can you get after several months and years? How much do you expect versus what's coming out? So who knows? But then, I mentioned earlier, I guess you just have to hang in there and do your due diligence out here. So we will get on to a bit of what I'm referring to as the premiere segment of this show. And I want to read a couple of comments here before I get into that. Okay, Joseph Francis Burton says, "Wow, that is some super funky sponsor music." Well, it is. It is. It definitely changes the. It definitely changes the vibrations, if you will. And William Welch says, "Indeed, the great transformation is what they are trying to do. We must resist." And Joseph Francis Burton says, "I travel to the Philippines every year. My friends there are really afraid of Chinese expansion." I hear you. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's very interesting, Joseph Francis Burton. And thank you so much for all your support on the channel. So we're going to move on to the resurfacing of John Kerry. That is the former Secretary of State, John Kerry. And he seemed to be contributing to last week's discussions at the World Economic Forum. We'll take a look at that, and we'll have a word. We'll take that from our friends over at the JBS. This segment of our show is brought to you by our good friends at the John Birch Society. Less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. The JBS is a constitutional and educational organization that's been around for over 60 years, dedicated to upholding and defending the Constitution and working to preserve our freedoms and liberties in this country. The JBS does not endorse any political party or candidates. Rather, it focuses on the education, training, and development of the American voters. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. So we are going to go over to our liner. I thank you guys so much for all that you do. And so what you see before you is from our friends at the TNA, the New American, and the JBS. John Kerry talks, quote, "Great Reset," end quote, at World Economic Forum. And this was written by James Murphy. So, according to this, the former Secretary of State, John Kerry, took part in a panel discussion at the World Economic Forum, WECE, the ticker, last week, and the, quote, "Great Reset," end quote, was foremost on his mind. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also participated in the event, which looked forward to a coming Joe Biden presidency and a coming transformation of the planet's economy. The discussion largely centered on climate change, the CV-19, and the vast changes that the World Economic Forum believes are necessary to usher in the so-called fourth industrial revolution. And we will expound on that just a little bit later. The fourth industrial revolution, that is. Every globalist on the panel looked forward to the day when Joe Biden takes over as president, even though that election result is still far from a certainty. Quote, "The notion of a reset is more important now than ever," end quote, Kerry said. Quote, "I personally believe we're at the dawn of an extremely exciting time," end quote. Don't you guys just love this? Love the rhetoric? Love it. According to Kerry, a reset of some sort was necessary to stop the rising tide of nationalist populism in the United States and abroad, which he referred to as, quote, "a reflection of the inability of democratic governments in many parts of the world to deliver," end quote, on key issues facing citizens. Well, that's funny because the Pope shared that same sentiment earlier this year, but I'll keep going. That was a digression for you, but I'll move on. Kerry had harsh words for those who voted against Biden. Quote, "What astounds me is that as many people still voted for the level of chaos and breach of law and order and breaking the standards. And I think that the underlying reason for that is something that everybody has to examine," end quote. And not just America, according to Kerry. Quote, "I think Europe has to look at that with the Brexit and the rising national populism. Nationalistic populism," end quote, Kerry said, "which is really one of the priorities that we all have to address. You can't dismiss it," end quote. Von der Leyen welcomed the prospect of a friendly face in the White House since there's much to accomplish with the coming reset, including writing, quote, "a new rule book for the digital economy and the digital society," end quote. Like the WEC founder, you guessed it, Klaus Schwab, von der Leyen says the CV pandemic as more of an opportunity than a problem. Quote, so covering everything from data to infrastructure, but also talking about security and democracy, technology to fair taxation. All of these topics are on the table with digital change, end quote, von der Leyen said. Quote, the need for global cooperation and this acceleration of change will both be drivers of the Great Reset. And I see this as an unprecedented opportunity, end quote. And it would be helpful for the globalists to have a compliant puppet such as Joe Biden in the White House. Quote, it's good to have a friend in the White House, end quote, von der Leyen said. Quote, we should not forget what kind of strength we can develop. We need a new agenda. And of course, we will have to start with the most pressing issue, which is the CV-19. The second big topic is climate change, fighting climate change. The third topic is the tech topic, end quote. Kerry vowed that under a Biden administration, one of the first things that would occur is that the United States would quickly rejoin the disastrous Paris Climate Agreement. But according to the former Secretary of State, that's not good enough. Quote, I know Joe Biden believes this. It's not just enough to rejoin, quote, the Paris Climate Agreement for the United States. It's not enough for us to do just a minimum of what it requires, end quote, Kerry said. Quote, the Biden administration will focus on every sector of the American economy, end quote, Kerry said. Quote, there will be a 2035 goal to achieve net neutrality with respect to power and production. We're ready to come back in and help lead and raise the ambition in Glasgow to accelerate this incredible capacity for a transformation in the private sector, end quote. In other words, should Biden ascend to the presidency, look for gas and energy prices to rise, fracking to end, and rolling blackouts to slow move east out of California to the rest of America. Also participating in the discussion was New York Times media columnist Ben Smith, which is ironic since last week his own newspaper referred to the idea of a Great Reset as a baseless conspiracy theory. Even though his newspaper believes that, Smith still thinks that the media will play a vital role in the Great Reset. Quote, I think you're seeing the mainstream media institutions become a bit more confident in trying to set the national agenda, end quote, Smith said. Set the national agenda? Aren't they were just supposed to report news in an unbiased way? So that comes from our friends at the JBS. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this segment of Black Spring with Autumn. Thank you guys so much for taking care with the channelytics. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody that has come over. And I just want to give you just a little bit of insight from yours truly, Klaus Schwab. He seems to be the brain, the engineer of a bit of this talk on the global reset. So I just want to give you some on the fourth industrial revolution, and we'll have a small video clip, and then I will let you guys get back to your Tuesday. And thank you guys so much for all that you do. We'll have just a short break, and we'll get into this statement on the fourth industrial revolution. Thank you guys so much for all that you do. Thank you so much for coming into Black Spring with Autumn on your Tuesday, and it is a holiday week, and I hope you are all navigating your holiday plans and surviving the prove and reproves from state to state. We'll be right back after this break. Stay tuned. All right, guys. So we'll just have a little bit of a statement, a little bit of clarification, and it's going to come from yours truly himself, Klaus Schwab. We'll have just a little bit of that for you. I thank you guys so much for all that you do and for coming in on this segment. All right, so what you see before you is coming from the World Economic Forum themselves. And here it talks about the fourth industrial revolution by Klaus Schwab. So Klaus Schwab, of course, is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum and has been at the center of the global affairs for over 4 decades. He is convinced that we are at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally changing the way we live, work, relate to one another, which he explores in his new book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution. Now, of course, you guys can get this on Amazon, and I am in no way advocating, or I am not an associate of Klaus Schwab or his project here. However, I will tell you that his fourth industrial revolution has it has a bit of a disturbing tone. But in this case, I'll give you what's here. Previous industrial revolutions liberated humankind from animal power, made mass production possible, and brought digital capacities to billions of people. The fourth industrial revolution is, however, fundamentally different. It is characterized by a range of new technologies that are fusing the physical, digital, and biological worlds, impacting all disciplines, economies, and industries, and even challenging ideas about what it means to be human. Now, I hope you got that. That's pretty intense. It's even challenging ideas about what it means to be human. The resulting shifts and disruptions mean that we live in a time of great promise and great peril. The world has the potential to connect billions more people to digital networks, dramatically improve the efficiency of organizations, and even manage assets in ways that can help regenerate the natural environment, potentially undoing the damage of previous industrial revolutions. However, Schwab also has grave concerns that organizations might be unable to adapt. Governments could fail to employ, regulate new technologies to capture their benefits. Shifting power will create important new security concerns. Inequality may grow and societies fragment. Schwab puts the most recent changes into historical context. He outlines the key technologies driving this revolution. He discusses the major impacts on governments, businesses, civil society, and individuals, and suggests ways to respond. At the heart of his analysis is the conviction that the fourth industrial revolution is within the control of all of us, as long as we are able to collaborate across geographies, sectors, disciplines to grasp the opportunities it presents. In particularly, Schwab calls for leaders and citizens to, quote, together shape a future that works for all, but putting people first, empowering them and constantly reminding ourselves that all of these new technologies are first and foremost tools made by people for people, end quote. Learning how humankind can benefit from this revolution while addressing its challenges is also the central aim of the World Economic Forum annual meeting. Now, this was the one in 2016, which was being held under the theme, quote, mastering the fourth industrial revolution. So here again, we're up to 2020 right about now. So those forums are still happening. There's summits that happen every single day with every single level of shareholder, stakeholder, intersectionality you might think of, whether it's race, gender, you name it. And again, this can be found, of course, on your favorite print on demand source, whether it's Amazon or wherever you shop for your reading these days. So I think these are things to kind of keep your eye on, because I think they pretty much navigate. And they kind of tell you what's going on. They tell you the agendas, how the agendas are changing, how they're shifting, what's working, what's not working. And I think that this whole agenda has already been thwarted by the Trump administration. You've heard from Barack Obama that it's going to take, in the healing and the recovery, it's going to take more than one election, which to me sounds like a one-party rule is what they're advocating for. And even Michael Bloomberg has thrown his opinions into the economy, the new economy. We have new economy, great resets. All of this is new. It's their idea. It's their idea of what you should be doing, how you should be living your life, what you should be eating. So that's where we are. So I'm going to close out this stream with a video, and that's going to come from the World Economic Forum. Hope you guys are doing well as usual, and that you're off to a great start of your holiday week. And thanks so much for lending me your ear and spending some time here with Black Spring with Autumn. So we'll go to that fourth industrial video right now. Thank you so much, guys. Once again, I want to thank you guys so much for spending your time here on Black Spring with Autumn. And we'll have a final word for the sponsors. I want to thank them so much for all that they do to support the channel, because without you guys, these things don't quite hang in there together. So I appreciate you guys and all that you do. And I appreciate you guys for taking the time to come in during your holiday week. Thank you so much. Looking for great content creators on the subject of politics, news, culture, scripture, history, automobiles, culture, and much, much more, check out our sponsors: Derek C. Williams, Killer Whale Channels, The Definition of Anarchy, Joseph Francis Burton, Chrysler Imperial H, Little Miss Goth, AZ Infidel, Cold War Jesus, Anthony Scioli, and Let the Truth Be Told. And now, back to the news. All right, guys, I thank you so much for all that you do. And thank you so much for either hitting that like button, the unlike button, the share button, and throwing caution to the wind, or thank you for just being here. So I appreciate you guys. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I will see you guys on the next segment in the comment section, on a video, next flash stream or live stream. Have a great rest of your your Tuesday.